This is lesson 9.3, Exploring Arrays, Areas, and Fractions, the parent help video for grade 3 everyday math. There aren't really any new vocabulary words for this unit, but we are going to talk a little bit about the word array. An array is a set of dots having columns and rows with the same number in each row and also the same number in each column, even though the number of dots in the rows will often vary from the number of dots in the columns. But arrays are very handy. They can be used for many things. In today's lesson, kids will use arrays to work with multiplication. So for example, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a 4 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a 4 by 6 array. And they would count these dots and realize that there are 24 dots, for example. The arrays are going to be a little bit bigger though, so that they can work on doing 2-digit by 1-digit multiplication. So for example, 24 by 6, they'd have to have an array with 24 squares across and 6 down, just to kind of help kids get the concepts of the area. And that's the other piece that kids are going to be working with today. They want to be able to count squares to find the total area covered in an array model. So in this case it would be 24. 24 for an array, but how many squares are actually in there, they could count those up. So we just want kids to be able to do that. We also want them to be able to draw rectangles and squares with given areas. So if we say there's a square with that has an area of 24 units, we want them to be able to, or 24 square units, we want them to be able to say, oh well, okay, I know that I need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe they're connecting dots here. 3, 4, so it's 4 down, 4 units down, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across, like that. And so then it would turn out that they would have squares, and this isn't my neatest drawing, but it's going to look something like this for them. They'll be able to draw that out and say, okay, now I have 6 squares across, I have 4 squares down, 6 times 4 is 24. So we want to be able to give them the units. They think what two factors are going to equal this number, and then they create an array with a factor going down that number of squares and a factor going across that number of squares. Okay, so that's an important thing for kids to be able to do in this unit. As far as how this works at home, we want kids to be able to think about area, essentially. You know, how would they section off a room, or maybe even just talk about a piece of a table or a piece of your yard. A piece of something that they could use to section off and measure and create an array with. You can also have them draw. Using graph paper is a great idea because the squares are already on there and they just have to draw around them. So they could create like a picture, and you could ask them to figure out the area of certain parts of their picture. Even like a robot or something that would be something fun for them to draw, but that would have a lot of square units and arrays in it, or vehicles, or I mean anything really that kids can count and measure the area of using this visual array. In class today we're going to use Geo Boards, okay, which is essentially a plastic board that have pegs sticking up out of it like this, and then what kids are going to do, there's a few more pegs, but they're going to put elastics around the pegs like this, and they'll have to talk about the area that they're measuring, okay, that they're enclosing in there. They'll have to use the elastics to get some experience just learning about the area and how they can create shapes with those areas, squares with those areas, and rectangles. So this is lesson 9.3, Exploring Arrays, Areas, and Fractions, the parent helped video for grade 3 everyday math.